First up, let's take a look at what's happening with regards to Israel. The war between Israel and Hamas has now entered its 71st day. Let's get you the latest update from that front. What we understand is that the IDF has accidentally killed 3 hostages. This has led to a series of protests as well in Israel. 250,000 Israelis have been displaced as of now because of this war. 1.7 million is the total number of Palestinians who have been displaced in this war. 930,000 Palestinians have been internally displaced in Gaza. This is another number or a statistic that shows about the internal displacement of the Palestinians. Meanwhile, Biden's advisor has played down the differences with Israel over the war effort. There has been a kind of a back-channel pressure on Israel to tone down its war machine in Gaza as it moves towards South Gaza from north. Now, IDF says it has recovered bodies of 2 soldiers abducted by Hamas as of now, and they said that they are still pushing ahead in the southern Gaza region. Well, the story that we are tracking from Israel and the repercussions it's having, Israeli military mistakenly killed 3 hostages in Gaza that were held by Hamas. IDF spokesperson claims that the military thought that the hostages were a threat and fired by mistake. The military is sorry and will check everything carefully is what they have said. Take a look at that explanation.
I would like to update the public with difficult and painful news about an event that occurred earlier today. During the battles in Shujaa, the entire IDF mistakenly identified 3 kidnapped Israelis as a threat. As a result, the force fired at them and they were killed. After the shooting, during a scan and examination, an immediate suspicion arose regarding the identity of the dead, and their bodies were quickly transferred for examination in Israel, and there the hostages were identified. Yotam Haim, his memory is blessed, who was kidnapped from Kfar Aza by the terrorist organization Hamas on October 7th. Samar Talalka, his memory is blessed, who was kidnapped from Nir Am by the terrorist organization Hamas on October 7th. And another hostage whose name we will not mention at the request of his family.
Hundreds protested in Tel Aviv after the Israeli military announced it had mistakenly killed 3 hostages being held in Gaza by Hamas during an incident which is under review. Now, the protesters first met outside a military compound in Tel Aviv and then marched through the city carrying posters of hostages still held in Gaza and called on the government to bring them home safely. Israeli and Palestinian representatives to the United Nations made their case in favor and against a ceasefire before the General Assembly. Now, speeches from Ambassador to the Permanent Observer Mission of the State of Palestine, Riyad Mansour, and the Israeli representative to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, came after the General Assembly passed a resolution calling for a ceasefire. The resolution had 153 countries voting in favor and 23 abstaining. The US and Israel, which argue a ceasefire only benefits Hamas, voted against the measure along with 8 other countries.
It also targets our present and future, killing engineers and doctors and poets and academics. It also targets those who could document the crimes and inform the world, the journalists. We mourn one of those journalists, Samer Abu Dagga, wounded in an Israeli drone strike and left to bleed to death for 6 hours, while ambulances were prevented from reaching him.
The UN refugee chief said a new refugee crisis from Gaza must be prevented, referring to the possibility that hundreds of thousands of people already uprooted by the Israel-Hamas conflict could flee into Egypt. The UN Refugee Agency said that the participants of a major forum had pledged more than $2.2 billion towards global refugee crisis in a move that the United Nations chief said would help forge consensus to address refugee crisis in various places of conflict. Take a look.
During the 3 days during which we have been here, tragically, scores of civilians in Gaza have been killed. Many more have been displaced into an already impoverished corner of an already tiny sliver of land. That violence must stop. That violence must stop. There must be a humanitarian ceasefire now. And like the Secretary General just said, aid must be allowed into Gaza to reach civilians with the speed and quantity that they need and they deserve. Hostages must be released. And I want to be clear. What is already a massive displacement crisis within Gaza must not turn into yet another refugee crisis.
The Israeli army released a video that showed airstrikes targeting Hezbollah targets in response to the recent rocket launches. In a written statement, the Israeli military said that the airstrikes targeted a command and control center as well as military sites Hezbollah were operating in. Three members of the Islamist militant group Hamas were brought before the investigating judge of the Federal Court of Justice on, according to the court, what we understand that this particular trial was happening in Germany. Now, in a written statement a day earlier, the German prosecutor said that 4 Hamas members were detained on suspicion of planning attacks on Jewish institutions in Europe. 3 of the suspects were detained in Berlin and another was detained in Netherlands. Now, according to the prosecutors, it was a full-fledged investigation that revealed the alleged plot. Dutch national Nazi R was arrested by the police in Rotterdam, while Lebanon-born Abdel Hamid Al-Ibrahim El-Ar was arrested from the German capital of Berlin along with Mohammed B. A Houthis-controlled group from Yemen hit 2 ships near the Red Sea. The Houthis say they attacked 2 ships heading to Israel. While the US says it's a threat, the other countries like Germany want them to stop. Meanwhile, big shipping companies stopped sending containers there, and they are worried about the security that could be provided at the Red Sea against the Houthi attacks. Take a look.
At a protest in support of Palestinians in Yemen on Friday, Houthi military spokesman Yahya Sarriya said the Iran-aligned group had attacked 2 more commercial ships heading for Israel.
The Marine forces of the Yemeni armed forces carried out a military operation against 2 ships, MSC Alanya and MSC Palladium, that were heading to the Israeli entity. They were targeted by 2 Marine rockets. The targeting operation came after the refusal of their crews to respond to the calls of Yemeni Marine forces, as well as the fiery warning messages.
A U.S. defense official confirmed there were 2 attacks which he said caused fires on board, though one was not on a ship cited by the Houthis. Yemen's Houthis have been attacking vessels in Red Sea shipping lanes and firing drones and missiles at Israel, saying they aim to support the Palestinians as Hamas and Israel wage war. The Houthis, who rule much of Yemen, have vowed they will continue with their attacks until Israel stops its offensive in the Gaza Strip. Germany's foreign minister said one of the ships attacked on Friday was German-owned and called for the immediate end to such actions by the Houthis. She also emphasized that the security threat to Israel comes not only from Hamas in Gaza, but also from the Houthis. Meanwhile, Danish shipping company AP Møller-Mærsk told Reuters Friday it will pause all container shipments through the Red Sea until further notice. This comes after a missile on Thursday missed its Maersk Gibraltar ship seen in this file photo, and a separate container vessel suffered another attack on Friday. When asked about the Houthi actions, Saudi Arabia's Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan on Friday expressed concern about their impact.
Of course, we are concerned about the potential for escalation. Our region is very complex, and we do not need any other conflicts to erupt, and therefore we hope that we will be able to avoid any further escalations in our region.
Later on Friday, White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby highlighted the danger for commercial ships in the Red Sea and said he would have more information about a maritime task force soon.
Now, across the world, the black and white keffiyeh headscarf has become an emblem of solidarity with the Palestinian cause. Israel supporters view keffiyeh as disrespectful to the 1,200 Israelis who were killed, while pro-Palestinian protesters see it as a symbol of solidarity. Take a look.
Across the world, the black and white keffiyeh headscarf has become an emblem of solidarity with the Palestinian cause, and sometimes a problem for those wearing it, as war rages between Israel and Hamas militants in Gaza. Activists say police in France and Germany, which have cracked down on pro-Palestinian protests, have cautioned, fined or detained people sporting the checkered scarf. Supporters of Israel see it as a provocation and backing for what they see as terrorism. This is what the keffiyeh means for protester Stefani Costa in Lisbon.
Significa resistência, luta.
It means resistance, the struggle of people who somehow resist colonialism, which is something so brutal, in which you lose the right to your land, your history, your culture. So I think it carries that weight, the weight of freedom, real freedom.
Rami al-Ashik, a Palestinian Syrian poet who lives in Berlin, says people were being asked to take off the keffiyeh. He found this way round the problem, getting one tattooed onto his arm. Israel supporters say wearing the keffiyeh shows a disregard for the 1,200 Israelis killed in a cross-border raid by Hamas militants on October 7th, which triggered Israel's assault on Gaza. Ashik and others point to the more than 18,000 people killed in the offensive, and Israel's continued occupation of Palestinian territory.
Ever since the war in Gaza started, it felt like so urgent for me that this is the time, because all the criminalization of every Palestinian symbol, the Palestinian flag, the keffiyeh, seen as a symbol of terror and being criminalized like Arabic language everywhere. So I thought, like, no, it's the time for me. I want to have it now urgently.
The heated debate has descended to violence. In Vermont in the United States last month, 3 college students of Palestinian descent, 2 wearing keffiyehs, were shot, leaving 1 paralyzed. The keffiyeh, pronounced kufiya in formal Arabic, has long been a symbol of Palestinian nationalism. Late PLO leader Yasser Arafat was rarely photographed without one, folded in the shape of historic Palestine. In Hebron, in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, the looms are working full tilt. This is the Hirbawi keffiyeh factory, the last on Palestinian territory. Online orders have soared since Israel started striking Gaza. With a monthly capacity of 5,000 keffiyehs, it will take years to fill the backlog of 150,000 people who've expressed interest. That's according to Nael El-Kassis, Hirbawi's partner in Europe, who spoke to Reuters in Lisbon.
It was like switching the light on, you know. It was like we were selling very slow, and then suddenly we had a huge demand on keffiyehs. In general, when there is a conflict, symbols play a very important role, and keffiyeh is not an exception.
The traditional headscarf first took on a political significance with the revolt against British rule in the late 30s, when rural guerrillas covered their faces with the cloth, historians say. The black and white pattern came in the 1950s, they say, when British Commander General John Glubb assigned it to Palestinian soldiers in the Arab Legion to distinguish them from the Jordanians' red and white. It was later adopted by Palestinian militants. As the Palestinian flag was banned in the Israeli-occupied West Bank and Gaza, Between 1967 and 1993, the KAIA grew as a symbol of the struggle for a Palestinian state. Al-Kassis says the protests show the KAIA now transcends borders.
When we see people go to the street and wear our kufiya, wear our own clothes, they wear them and they go to the street and they show solidarity with them. This gives us hope that these governments do not represent their people, and their people are having something else to say. And in the future, hopefully, things will work differently.
Well, we slip into a short break now, but in that break, we tell you how the women factor is becoming huge in India's elections.
हमारी नारी शक्ति को सशक्त करने से ही देश सशक्त होने वाला है।
हर महीने महिलाओं को 1500 रुपए प्रति माह दिलवाया जाएगा।
What Nitish Kumar did to provide cycle to girls, so they could safely, quickly move out of the house, go to school, and quickly come back. Tring, 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 tring.
माँ अन्नपूर्णा तू ही, माँ अन्नपूर्णा है तू ही बीणा वादनी, हे शक्ति स्वरूपा जगदम्बा, हे नारी तू नारायणी।
News is now content. Just stream it. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Welcome back. Prince Harry scored the biggest win yet in his legal war against British tabloids on Friday when London's High Court ruled that he had been a victim of phone hacking and other unlawful acts by the Mirror Group journalists with the knowledge of their editors. Take a look at this report.
Prince Harry scored his biggest win yet in his legal war against the UK press on Friday, when London courts ruled he'd been the victim of phone hacking and other unlawful activities by journalists at Mirror Group newspapers. The judge said that MGN editors, including the high-profile former Daily Mirror editor Piers Morgan, knew about these activities. Morgan, a constant critic of Harry and his wife Meghan, has consistently denied any involvement in or knowledge of phone hacking. King Charles's younger son was awarded over $180,000 and, in a statement read by his lawyer, David Sherborne, responded to the legal victory.
My commitment to seeing this case through is based on my belief in our need and collective right to a free and honest press, and one which is properly accountable when necessary. I hope that the court's findings will serve as a warning to all media organisations who have employed these practices and then similarly lied about them.
The Prince also called for authorities to take action against those identified as having broken the law. Harry was one of about 100 claimants, including actors and sports stars, who had sued MGN over claims of phone hacking and unlawful information gathering between 1991 and 2011. And Judge Timothy Fancourt gave an excoriating conclusion that there had been widespread hacking and unlawful activities at MGN from 1996 until 2011. He said it even carried on while a public inquiry into illicit practices at British newspapers was taking place. The MGN case is just one of 4 Harry is pursuing at the High Court. He has won the right to take to trial a similar phone hacking case against Associated Newspapers, the publisher of the Daily Mail, and Mail on Sunday. Allegations of unlawful behaviour by News Corp's News Group newspapers, the publisher of The Sun, will also go to trial.
Britain, Japan and Italy have signed an international treaty to establish a program aimed at developing an advanced fighter jet. The 3 nations' defence ministers announced on Thursday, and this project is set to be a milestone in European defence programs as well as for Japan.
Britain, Japan and Italy have agreed a deal to build a new generation of fighter jet. Defence ministers from the 3 nations signed the accord in Tokyo on Thursday. That sets in motion the Global Combat Air Programme. An early mock-up of the plane has previously been shown off by UK defence giant BAE Systems. The programme is intended to create a next-generation stealth combat aircraft capable of defeating the latest jets from Russia or China. Officials say its radar will provide 10,000 times more information than current systems. Speaking in Tokyo, British Defence Minister Grant Shapps said the need for the new jet was clear.
The risks and problems from Europe to the Indo-Pacific are clear for all to see. And so it is enormously important that we join together across our nations to produce this kind of security for our skies.
The new plane is meant to be in service by 2035. Development efforts will be headquartered in the UK, with the first chief executive for the project to come from Japan. Besides BAE, major firms involved include Italy's Leonardo and UK jet engine maker Rolls-Royce. Reuters has previously reported that Japanese firms including Mitsubishi Heavy Industries will also play a big role. The parliaments of each country must now ratify the agreement.
Rudy Giuliani, ex-lawyer to Donald Trump, faces a $148 million payout to two former Georgia election workers, Vandria Shea Moss and Ruby Freeman, due to defamation. Now, Giuliani falsely accused them of rigging the 2020 election against Trump. The damages encompass about $73 million for harm to their reputation and emotional distress, along with $75 million as punitive damages for Giuliani's actions.
You regret attaching your name to it?
I am very, very honored. This indictment is a travesty.
It's turned my life upside down. I no longer give out my business card. I don't transfer calls. I don't want anyone knowing my name. I don't want to go anywhere with my mom because she might yell my name out over the grocery aisle or something. I don't go to the grocery store at all. I haven't been anywhere at all. I've gained about 60 pounds. I just don't do nothing anymore. I don't want to go anywhere. I second guess everything that I do. It's affecting my life in a major way. In every way. All because of lies. For me doing my job, same thing I've been doing forever.
In Sofia, Bulgaria, the dismantling of a 70-year-old Soviet monument has begun amid huge controversy. The monument to the Soviet army, erected in 1954, which was symbolized by the victory over fascism and decades of communist rule. Now, while considered structurally unsafe, the removal fulfills a promise by the newly elected mayor. Many support relocation to a museum, but opposition, including pro-Moscow groups, want a referendum. The park, which was often painted with various colors, has cultural significance as well. Despite concerns about erasing history, authorities press on, sparking criticism from Russia. Dismantling has slated for a month and aims for completion by Christmas, with figures preserved in a socialist art museum. This is a monument that has been at the center of the controversy, especially for the mayoral elections in Sofia, where the current mayor, who has been newly elected, has said that this particular piece of Soviet-era monument would be dismantled and taken away. The city is divided over it, and pro-Moscow groups are asking for a referendum on its removal rather than executive action from the city's council. Friends actor Matthew Perry died from an accidental ketamine overdose. Medical examiners are looking into the latest evidence coming from the investigation, and they're concluding that their investigation into the death of the beloved but troubled TV star could be because of ketamine overdose. Perry wrote in his memoirs of how he had relied on using ketamine daily at points during his battles with addiction. He said that the drug eased his pain and helped with depression. The report emerged almost 7 weeks after Perry, who was aged 54, acknowledged a history of drug and alcohol abuse and was discovered lifeless at a jacuzzi of his Los Angeles residence by his live-in assistant. Perry, who played Chandler Bing on the hit TV sitcom from 1994 to 2004, died at the age of 54, having been found unconscious in the swimming pool at his house. We slip into a short break now. News and updates will continue on the other side.
ChatGPT. It can generate codes and human-like responses through text, write stories, and do a lot more.
I work in a newsroom with anchors, researchers and scriptwriters, graphic artists, producers, video editors, camera crew. But does a newsroom really need them today?
All of us have to think about unique and distinctive value addition that cannot be automated or repeated or replaced by a machine.
ChatGPT may kill many companies. A human has to be in the loop with an ability to control this.
Dark Side of the Boom. Streaming now.
Since the last 2 years, Khalistani terror groups are threatening Indian diplomats in Canada, US, UK and Australia. Investigations of these threats led us to the first ever abduction and killing of an Indian diplomat, Ravindra Matre, in UK's Birmingham in 1984. Our months-long investigation finally led us to the murderer of Ravindra Matre, who has been hiding in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir for the last 40 years. Watch our exclusive documentary, Murder of an Indian Diplomat, where we reveal the man who killed Ravindra Matre.
Stop searching, start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
It was my 14th birthday.
On birthday, daughter waits.
Home missing father.
He was carrying a cake for his daughter.
49-year-old Birmingham-based
Indian diplomat vanishes.
He was grabbed and bundled into a car by 4 assailants.
KLA claims responsibility. Demands Kashmiri separatists.
Maqbool Bhatt's release.
Goli maro, aur feck do.
And within 3 days, they shot him dead.
Abducted diplomat.
Found murdered in Leicestershire.
I said, who ordered to kill him? To me, he said, yes, I ordered it. And he never came home.
Stop searching, start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Welcome back. Let's move to some of the climate stories that are there, which tends to affect everyone's lives. Now, let's understand how the COP28 deal was done. In a historic move at COP28 in Dubai, over 200 countries agreed to transition away from fossil fuels, despite initial concerns. Strategic diplomacy and collaboration paved the way for a groundbreaking global agreement. Take a look.
We have now reached the end.
For the first time in history, countries have expressed a desire to end the oil age. The COP28 Accord from the summit in Dubai calls for transitioning away from fossil fuels. Key players, including conference president Sultan Al Jaber, say it's historic.
You delivered.
This is a sea change moment.
I think this is a global turning point.
Some remain dissatisfied with concessions allowing for the use of tech such as carbon capture to keep greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere. But striking a deal was by no means a foregone conclusion. Here's a look at how the COP28 deal got done.
I promised I would roll up my sleeves.
Before the conference, COP28 President Al Jaber was pilloried by environmental activists as untrustworthy. He runs the United Arab Emirates State Oil Company. But he didn't want to oversee a failed conference. Before it started, his office pumped up climate initiatives, like an EU and US-led declaration by nations to triple renewable energy capacity by 2030.
The urgency of this moment is clear.
And a US-China cooperation agreement reached in November. Sources say getting a deal took deft maneuvering by the conference host, as well as back-channel diplomacy from the top envoys of the world's biggest polluters, the US and China. Al Jaber intentionally stirred the pot, sources say. His approach was to put out deliberately provocative drafts for a deal that forced negotiators to reveal the outer limits of their positions, then find common ground. On December 11th, Al Jaber's draft deal outlined a broad menu of options that countries could, not should, take to fight climate change. Those options ranged from carbon capture to reducing fossil fuel use or cutting subsidies. Missing was any mention of a phase-out. That sparked outrage, including from small island nations.
We will not sign our gift certificates. It is our very survival that is at stake.
While scores of countries came to Dubai wanting language around phasing out fossil fuels entirely, it was something oil group OPEC particularly opposed. But the outrage expressed at the summit was the desired effect, according to one source, who said the move made clear where people stood.
Mr. Kerry.
The presidency then took meetings into the early morning hours over the next days.
We're going to work.
What's going on?
And did not release an updated draft until December 13th, a day after the summit's scheduled end. The term phase out remained a red line that some like China and Saudi Arabia would never accept. So U.S. envoy John Kerry and his Chinese counterpart Xie Jinhua found a workaround. They already had a roadmap from their recent climate cooperation in November. Use words that essentially mean the same thing as phase out. With China and the U.S. aligned, it was just a matter of getting OPEC on board. One source said it was Kerry, China, and the Saudis that played a constructive role at the 11th hour. A source familiar with the negotiations said the final flurry of diplomacy ensured the deal would pass.
Meanwhile, climate activist Greta Thunberg, speaking from Stockholm, criticized the recent COP28 climate deal in Dubai, stating it's a letdown for most affected nations by global warming. She emphasized that despite the agreement involving nearly 200 countries to initiate cuts in fossil fuel usage and implement various measures like promoting clean energy, it won't suffice to prevent temperatures from surpassing critical levels and halting the worst impacts of climate change. Let's listen in to what Greta Thunberg had to say.
This is the bare minimum. Some people say that this is a first step, but we've already had first steps and that hasn't led us anywhere. The emissions are still increasing. We are experiencing record highs. This text is toothless and it is nowhere even close to being sufficient to keep us within the 1.5 degree limit. It is a stab in the back for those most vulnerable, and it was undemocratic. It was signed when many island states were not in the room, and that is completely unacceptable, and we cannot talk about climate justice without having the most affected in the room. I think this COP has once again proven that the COP processes are not working in our favor. They are not designed to solve the climate crisis. They are more working as an alibi for world leaders to say that, oh, we signed this, and then not actually doing anything. If the COPs would have led to anything, we would have seen results by now. There have been 28 COPs, and that has not led us anywhere, but moving still in the wrong direction. As long as we don't treat the climate crisis as a crisis, and as long as we keep lobby interests influencing these texts and these processes, we are not going to get anywhere. We need to address the root causes.
Cold weather gripped large parts of China on Thursday and forced some highway closures around its capital as unusually icy conditions disrupted road, rail and aviation networks. Meanwhile, in Shanghai, which is considered to be the commercial capital of China, also saw a cold wave hit that city. The cold snap is moving from several northern provinces hit by blizzards to central and southern areas as well, such as the province of Guizhou, and pushing deep into the lower reaches of the Yangtze River Delta. Sections of the highway under the Beijing Traffic Authority's purview, including the Daxing Airport on Outer Ring Road linked to neighboring Hebei, was well parts of expressways of Shanghai and Guangdong province in south have been temporarily shut due to the snow. Forecasters said that sharp falls in temperatures are expected over the next 2 days, particularly in the southern regions. Meanwhile, more than 500 people have been hospitalized after 2 subway trains collided amid heavy snowfall in Beijing. Authorities say that 102 people had suffered broken bones because of that accident. Let's in fact take a look at how AI is shaping political campaigning. Ashley, an AI-powered campaign volunteer, but far from the typical robocaller since none of her responses are canned or pre-recorded. Given the ability to hold conversational calls, Ashley calls thousands of Pennsylvania voters like a pro-campaign volunteer to analyze a person's profile and offer tailored conversations around their key issues. Take a look.
Are you familiar with Shemaine Daniels and her campaign for Congress?
This political campaign call is from Ashley, a new artificial intelligence volunteer.
Hey there. I hope you're doing well.
She's part of a new era of political campaigning being ushered in by generative AI. But some warn tools like Ashley could make disinformation in American politics worse.
As a mom, I think a lot about the future.
Democrat Shemaine Daniels is running for Congress in Pennsylvania. Last year, Daniels lost to Trump-aligned Republican Scott Perry. This time around, she's looking for help from Ashley, who can speak 20 languages, to reach more voters.
When I was initially approached about thinking about this, my first thought was one of the things that we are very poor at is reaching diverse populations. The goal for me in using this tool is to expand those who can participate in the campaigning process.
Ashley's creator is a startup called Civox. It says she's the first political phone banker powered by generative AI, and that this tech is going to scale fast. CEO Ilya Muzikansky says his firm plans mainly to work with Democrats.
Each call is unique. Before a number is called, there is a set of data that the campaign already knows about the person they're calling. Sometimes that can be as basic as a first name and last name, or sometimes it can be a lot more detailed than that. And based on that information, we are able to have conversations that are customized to the recipient, and that's done on the fly.
Some are worried. In May, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman testified in Congress that he was nervous about generative AI's ability to compromise election integrity through one-on-one interactive disinformation. Others say this tech could worsen disinformation in the polarized landscape of American politics that's already battling deepfakes, realistic but fabricated videos and images created using AI algorithms. The Federal Communications and Election Commissions are looking into AI. But so far, there are no rules that directly apply to Ashley's work. John Basil at Northeastern University says that's a problem.
They just pollute or can pollute our information ecosystem. And it's not just that we don't have the tools to fight that. People aren't quite prepared. Like we see this all the time when people go to use ChatGPT for something and then they're surprised when it hallucinates or makes up some thing that's not quite true.
Civox says it welcomes regulation, and that it intentionally makes Ashley sound like a bot and disclose that it's AI, despite not being legally required to do so.
Well, that's all in this edition of the Bulletin. But up next is a News9 exclusive. India remains dedicated to reclaiming Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. According to the 1994 Parliament resolution, is war a suitable option to win back POK, or can we go through the International Court of Justice to address the
पाकिस्तान की सरकार को भी स्पष्ट बतलाना चाहता हूं कि कश्मीर की रट लगाकर कुछ हासिल नहीं होगा। भारत की संसद में पीओके को लेकर एक सर्वसम्मत प्रस्ताव पारित है। वह भारत का ही हिस्सा था, है और आगे भी हम मानते हैं।
August 1947